Okay, hey, welcome to the Lockdown Sessions presented to you by Wrestling Travel. Today, I am very pleased and honored to have with me Mike Pankow of Windy City Slam. Mike, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Justin. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the time.
Oh man, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk wrestling. I'm excited to talk Windy City. I'm excited to talk Chicago sports, even though I'm up here in Wisconsin. I'm excited to kind of discuss stuff with you. The biggest thing I want to talk about is Windy City Slam. Now, as you know, we're out of the United Kingdom. Windy City, in case people don't know, is based in Chicago. How long has it been around?
Well, we're approaching our 2-year anniversary. In fact, this weekend, August the 2nd, will be our 2-year anniversary of our webpage. And now, obviously, I'm sure you'll get into it a little bit later. We also have a podcast we've been running for a little over half a year. So it's been a brand I've been very excited about. I've dug deep into the local scene. I've also had stories on the national scene. AEW and Impact have been very good to me as well. So I'm very excited with this project that I've got going right now. And it's a personal passion project for me. I've been a wrestling fan all my life, ever since I was like 8 or 9 years old. And that was like mid-'80s. So I came up with WWF Hulk Hogan. I came up with the Von Erichs in World Class Championship Wrestling. A little bit of Ric Flair and the Horsemen and Dusty Rhodes on the NWA World Championship Wrestling Saturday night, 6:05 Eastern, 5:05 our time in the Central Time Zone. But yeah, that's basically my background in professional wrestling and how I got into it.
I don't know if you could see my eyes light up when you're talking mid-'80s wrestling.
Yeah.
I'm excited. And when you're talking Chicago, you're kind of talking some of my bread and butter, because I grew up on a very healthy diet of the AWA, the American Wrestling Association.
Yes.
So I am hoping that we could talk a little AWA. Mike, I always get asked, who is my favorite wrestler? And I always have to I'm proud of it, but nobody ever understands. And but it's Greg Gagne, because that's who I grew up watching.
Flyers.
Flyers. One of my first memories was Greg getting trained, going through Camp Slaughter with Sergeant Slaughter. I had 3 channels growing up here, and only one of them had the AWA on it, and that's what I grew up on. So I got a chance to talk to Nikita Koloff a couple months ago on here, and one of the questions I wanted to ask, like everybody does, Nikita, talk to me about the best of 7 with Magnum TA. But prior my research, I'm not a journalist, but I'll have you know I got called one a couple weeks ago. Was going down a YouTube hole, and I asked Nikita about 1985 at Comiskey Park. He's teaming with Ivan Koloff and Barry Darsow, and they're going against Baron Von Raschke, the Crusher, and the Bruiser. I want to talk to you about Chicago wrestling. I mean, because it's in the Midwest, Chicago, Minneapolis, it's huge. What did you grew up watching when you were very little, young Mike Pankow? What's the first wrestling that you see on TV? What first memory? What gets you hooked?
Believe it or not, my first memory is probably the Von Erichs down in Texas from World Class Championship Wrestling. They're on one of our local UHF channels. And that was back when I still believed the outcomes were real. And I'm like, oh, this guy's going to win. Oh, that guy's going to win. And I'd be disappointed to see a certain guy lose or whatever. But, yeah, it was the Von Erichs, Chris Adams, Jimmy Garvin, the Freebirds, Iceman King Parsons. And obviously then it was WWF, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant. Coco Beware was a favorite of mine. Jake the Snake Roberts, Randy Macho Man Savage from the Chicago area. Ooh, yeah. And all those guys. And then it was Mr. Perfect and the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. I just love 80s wrestling, and that's what got me hooked into all this.
That's what I missed. You remember that feeling of when they used to say, hey, WrestleMania's coming up. It's going to be Macho Man versus Ric Flair. I mean, and we had before this internet era, we were like, cool. Not even that, but it'd be like Virgil versus Brutus Beefcake. And we're like, okay, cool. We're all in. Before we were on the internet going, wow, that's a stupid matchup. And I missed One, I got to stop talking because this interview is with you, and I'm getting excited because we got 80s wrestling. One thing, get a chance to watch Slammiversary?
Yes, I did.
Now, to me, and I'm curious your opinion, they kept a lot of secrets pretty well covered. Now, granted, I didn't go looking for them, but I was really happy with the way we knew Gallows and Anderson were going to show up, but I thought they would have came out with the Motor City Machine Guns. But they flashed me back for just a brief moment to the 80s, 90s when I was a kid, and I didn't know. I was surprised. Did you get that same nostalgia?
I kind of was surprised by what they were able to do. I mean, EC3 and the vignette at the end, although you had a feeling he was coming back, but you didn't know when or how they were going to do it. And then the surprises like Eric Young being inserted in the championship match. And then a couple nights later, you had a vignette for Kurt Hawkins, a.k.a. Brian Myers.
Yeah.
They did a really, really nice job with the surprises. And back, the innocent days of wrestling before the sheets, before the internet. I mean, those were the days like, oh, my God, it's so unbelievable. I can't believe that guy showed up. I can't believe that guy turned or did a sneak attack or whatever.
Yeah. Do you find that hard now that you kind of cover wrestling with Windy City Slam? I mean, do you have hey, I've got to kind of find out and dig, but yet I don't want to? Is that a hard part for your job?
Yeah, it is a little difficult. I try to stay away from spoilers as much as I can so I can enjoy the weekly television products as they air or when I can watch them. Sometimes I can't watch everything live. I'll have to watch it like the same night later, depending on my my shoot job or some other circumstances. Oh, look, there's a wife too, so sometimes I actually have to spend time with my wife. So yeah, sometimes wrestling's put on to like the midnight or 1 a.m. hour in my house. But yeah, honestly, I really don't like doing spoilers. Even on the podcast, I don't mention spoilers if I have heard anything, unless it's something that the company has actually come out and said. Like WWE.com reports this, then okay, it's fair game. But if it's a spoiler in like a sheet or an interneter reporting it, I usually try to stay away from that.
Yeah, so I know about your late nights. That's how I think I caught you at like after midnight here. Just because I know we had talked about doing this show months back, and then I'm like, I got to get Mike on. I'm all over the place. I'm not a journalist, but you're an old school wrestling guy like me. What is your opinion, or has your opinion been of these cinematic matches?
Wow, I'm actually thrilled and enthralled by some of these things. I mean, not all of them are perfect, but I thought the last Ride match or the Boneyard match that was on AJ Styles at WrestleMania was very well done, and the production was good. And then obviously two guys that know the business inside and out put on a great show. And guys like Triple H, and I believe Jeremy Borash even had a little bit of a hand in setting that up. I thought they did an outstanding job. And I know a lot of people criticize the Money in the Bank matches. I got a big kick out of them, though. I just love them brawling all over the corporate headquarters and going up the elevator and chasing each other around. I really, really enjoyed that. For the most part, I really, really enjoyed the cinematic matches.
I was not wanting to like them, but then I remembered we're in the middle of a pandemic. And at the time, I would rather have wrestling on than have, like we were with baseball, basketball, and everything, nothing. So I thought they're giving us the entertainment that we want. And the Money in the Bank match, I want to believe that Brother Love is hanging out in the WWE headquarters and all that stuff's going on. Paul Heyman's like it took me back to my childhood where I'm like, oh, they could believe this, all this magic. So I liked it. Yeah, the eye for an eye match, I'm a little on, and I know that's not cinematic, but I still come from a like you said, when you were young, you still believe, but now that we're older, at least in physical appearance, I think our mind we're always young, but I want to still believe. And then when you come out and tell me, well, the winner's got to extract the eye, I'm like, man, how are they going to pull this off?
creative camera angles, hiding, and all that. Because obviously the eye doesn't really come out. Because if it did, that guy would really be in trouble. Like Rey Mysterio would be blind right now in that eye. So obviously that didn't happen. But at the same time, they did an okay job with it. The premise was stupid, yes. But, you kind of throw something at the wall and see if something sticks. Evidently, that didn't really stick too well.
My big thing was if the winner has to pull the other guy's eyes out, why do we have to call the paramedics out from the back? You think they'd be hanging out?
Yeah,
right
you
there.
think they'd be right there. Yeah,
yeah.
Not like a minute and a half to come out. Yeah,
That's what I was worried about. Not so much like, okay, I tuned in because I wanted to see what they were going to do. It was going to be CGI, but my whole thing was, did anybody who's writing this think this through? Like and maybe they did. What's going to happen the next week and the week after that? But they certainly have been entertaining. Like I said, not losing wrestling was a good thing. But now, what is your opinion? I have a very strong one of watching these matches without fans. I think has proven that probably sports in general, but specifically wrestling, the fans are just as big a part of the show as the performers.
Yeah, absolutely right, 100% right. And we're seeing it with baseball too. It's really, really awkward to see the empty stadiums and the pumped-in crowd noises. And I think they're doing their best. I think WWE, I think AEW, they're doing their best to inject something with, like, the Performance Center students with WWE, and then like some of the other enhancement talent and other talent in AEW at their shows at Daly's Place. They're doing their best, but yeah, it's not the same, obviously. And I know for WrestleMania, when it was absolutely 100% empty, it was really, really awkward. Just pretty good show otherwise. But yeah, fans are so important. I mean, performers feed off the fans. Even at like at a live event house show or something, they can take a reaction and turn it around and make it into an enjoyable product, or like maybe cut a scathing promo, or maybe just mid-match go ahead and change something up to get an ooh or an ah or a cheer or a boo. So yeah, I think the fan element is so important in professional wrestling, and it's sorely missing right now.
WrestleMania, when Kevin Owens jumps off the top of the stage, like he's wrestling Seth Rollins, my hat was completely off to him, because that's something you feed off the energy of the fans and in that moment. But now you've got nothing, and he still pulls a pretty decent leap off there, which is great. I want to talk about fans coming back, and specifically a promotion that you and I both enjoy and love, but right in your own backyard. August 7th, we got some Warrior Wrestling happening, and we're going to have fans. What do you think?
Oh, I think Steve Tortorello, Eric Hamilton over at Warrior Wrestling took a lot of precautions, put a lot of thought into things. And I've seen feedback from some people who are like, this is crazy. There's all these rules. I don't want to be a part of it. And that's their prerogative. I understand safety 150%. But obviously, I think Steve and Eric also understand that. And what they want to do is bring you a show, but at the same time, not put anybody at risk. I mean, we've been without local shows probably for 4 months and change now, other than maybe a couple of random ones around the periphery of the Chicago area. But this is the biggest event outdoors, like for sports entertainment, that there's been pretty much since the pandemic began here. I mean, they're expecting probably a few hundred people. It's going to be at the football stadium at Marion Catholic High School, Dave Matteo Field. The event is called Friday Night Lights, which I think is kind of cute because it's at the football field and it's on a Friday night. And they're going to have everybody spaced out throughout the bleachers. They're going to have like seating around the ring. I guess it's going to be spaced out. I think it's bring your own chair, if I remember the rules correctly. But yeah, there's going to be masks on most of the time. Even the VIP meet is going to be a little awkward since you can't get too close to the wrestlers, and the fact that you have to wear a mask when you're taking a picture with them if the wrestler permits you to take a picture with them. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of pitfalls, but at the same time, I think Steve and Eric have put together a great card. I think they want to entertain people, and have an enjoyable show. And it's still a fundraiser for the school. So I think that's another reason why I think it's so important for them to try to run this event, because it's money that goes toward the kids programs over at Marian Catholic, goes toward scholarships, goes toward things in the school that they might need. So all in all, I still think it's a wonderful, wonderful effort by Steve and company.
What a great promotion they have built from out of nowhere. And I know Steve and Eric, the last thing that they would want to do is put anybody in jeopardy. But also, we've got to start trying things and start moving on. And when you say great card, that's the understatement of the year, Mike. Look at these, I mean, Jeff Cobb and Brian Cage.
Wow, 2 hosses.
Man, I'm excited for that. And you know what? If I can't make it down there, because I just saw that Wisconsin might be banned from entering Chicago for a little while. I know that we're in the burbs, but I can go on Fight TV and order this.
Yeah.
And watch this. So worldwide, you're going to get a chance to see, the card. I mean, Kylie Ray versus Ray Lynn. Robert Anthony versus Brian Pillman.
Looking forward to that one. That should be really good.
Now, as fans, I can order on Fight TV and watch a show that has fans, which I think is going to make all the difference in the world. I talked with Steve just the other day when they had confirmed that, yeah, we can pull this off on Fight TV and stream it. So I'm excited. And like I said, this is a responsible promotion run by responsible guys who are going to take every precaution to make sure that the performers and the fans, the risks are as low as they can be. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, even another great match I'm looking forward to, too, is something I didn't even touch on my podcast this week, but I will next week when I preview the show a little bit more in depth, is Lance Archer, Sam Adonis. A couple more big hosses, and guys outside the ring are 2 of the nicest guys you'd ever meet. And Lance is really cool. Now he's getting a huge push in AEW with Jake the Snake Roberts. I love the fact that that's happening. And Sam, probably one of the best heels that people don't know because he's basically independent or down in Mexico or down over in Japan working. But, yeah, he's really good in the ring. He's very versatile, a big, strong guy. But you might be a little surprised by some of the agility he has, too. And I'm sure if you saw the War of Attrition match at Warrior Wrestling 8, Sam did this ridiculous dive off the ropes. It was amazing. I'm really looking forward to that match as well.
It did come down between Pillman and Sam at the end of that War of Attrition, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
And man, Pillman's the name that I recognize. But, man, I love it when I think I know what's going to happen and I see somebody like a Sam Adonis go, whoa. Yeah, Pillman's great. I'm going to set him over here. Who is this guy? I mean, that was a great match.
Very well booked. The story was told really, really well. Pillman kind of had a little bit of a losing streak coming into that, and he had a match earlier in the night against Bully Ray, Chicago street fight where Bully put him through a table. So the fact that he was able to even come out for this match, he was kind of like the surprise entrant put into the match by Brian Cage, ironically enough, who had to surrender the title because of his, I believe, his torn bicep or tricep or whatever it was. So, yeah, we had a new champion, and that's how Pillman even got into the match. So it was kind of like a old school kind of cool wrestling tale of the guy fighting through all the adversity to come out on top.
That War of Attrition concept, I don't know if Warrior is the first to do it, but it's certainly the first time I had heard of it. And I know the women and the men both that night went through it, and I thoroughly entertained.
Electric matches both, yes. And the women's one I really enjoyed, too. You had Tessa Blanchard and Taya Valkyrie at the end. And you even had great talent that got eliminated in the first wave, like Kylie Ray and Tasha Steeles and Ray Lynn. And people
Madison Rain.
Yeah, Madison Rain was in it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one I loved just to sit and watch because I didn't know. Oh, there's no way. Here's how this should happen. And it's like, whoa, she's gone already? Oh, that was great. So Warrior Wrestling continues to put on. Warrior Wrestling, I believe 6, was held the weekend of All Out in Chicago last summer.
Yes.
Did you go to that one?
I was there, yeah, and I was very tired about midway through that show. I had a long weekend covering show. It was amazing.
I was so hot, but a couple of the guys I was with, they announced it was going to be Alex Shelley and Austin Aries, and these guys decide, I've seen them both before. I'm going to go get a hot dog and get ready for intermission. And I'm so glad I sat my butt there and watched that match. That was probably goes down as one of my favorite matches that I've seen live. They both brought it. In fact, when Warrior said, hey, we're going to do a best of DVD when they're announcing it on Twitter, I'm going, please put that match on there. What did you think of that match?
I thought it was excellent. I mean, especially for a guy like Alex Shelley, who had kind of stepped away a little bit, and now he's back doing it full time again. And I always loved both those guys' work. It was a terrific match. Austin Aries I can watch all day too. Great performer inside the ring, and I'm a huge Motor City Machine Guns fan, so I was so jacked when I saw them come back to Impact.
Yeah, I just don't sleep on Alex Shelley. Don't sleep on Austin.
Yeah. And it was cool to see Alex Shelley with Kushida in NXT even very briefly.
Yeah, I'm just so happy that we've got real wrestling, and that's one that anybody watching this, if you get a chance, get that DVD, go to High Spots, find that match. You will not be disappointed. That's awesome. Mike, who's your you grew up on the Von Erichs. This is how good a journalist I am. I went way ahead, and now we're going all the way back. Who would you say, young Mike, if you had a favorite wrestler growing up, who would that have been?
As I was growing up, I mean, it kind of changed a little bit over the years, but it was probably Hogan. You know, I mean, it's everybody's answer. But, yeah, I was really into Hulkamania and all the different heels they threw at him and all the challenges he'd have to fight through, like getting squashed by Earthquake, getting betrayed by Andre the Giant, getting turned on by Macho Man. Although years later, I sit back and watch it, I'm like, shouldn't Macho Man be kind of the babyface here? I mean, Hogan was kind of intruding on Elizabeth, and Macho Man was the champion. So, I mean, wasn't Hogan jealous that he didn't have the title? So here I am, an older guy thinking back 25, 30 years. It's like, man, they could have done it this way, and I probably still would have enjoyed it. But, yeah, it was definitely Hogan at that point.
What is that, 1989? I think so. I'm 15 years old. But even at 15, though, you know, when the Marvel comics or DC, Mr. Freeze, all the supervillains are supervillains, but they believe in their head that they're right. I got that from Macho. His promos leading up to WrestleMania 5 were so intense and just had me captivated. And it was like, no, you know, when Elizabeth's on Macho's shoulder, Hogan lifts her up, and they we're breaking up here. They drop that closet with his hand right near her bottom. It was great stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I know they spliced in all these little things, and like, Hogan, you got lust in your eyes for Elizabeth, yeah.
Great. It was just, oh man, goosebumps.
Yeah.
Because I've always been impressed with wrestling before I got into it. When I was a kid, you go back and think about it. Even when Kurt Hennig turned on my boy Greg Gagne, they had all the little points in place there. Oh, he turned away just to tie his shoe, missed the tag, and all this stuff that you could go back to and go, oh, it was all along. And I've talked about this so much. I love Kurt Hennig now more because he made me hate him in the AWA. I couldn't stand him. And we're in high school, and the girls think, we don't like wrestling, but that Kurt Hennig is cute. And I'm like, cute? He turned on my boy Greg Gagne. But I love it. I love to be worked, especially when I'm a kid. I look back. Somebody who does that now, I think, very well, or very recently, The Miz.
Mm-hmm.
When he had the belt, right around WrestleMania 27.
Yeah.
Even though I've been in the business and knew about it, I'm like, freaking, I hate that guy. And then you pause and go, he's doing his job. And he's doing it.
You look back on that now, I just thought that was a pretty amazing little run that he had there with the title. Maybe it was a little early in his career, but yeah, he had the MTV stuff kind of in his past, and that's the type of stuff that Vince McMahon really likes, I think. And I think, and now he's really shown that he is a credible competitor in the ring over the last several years. Ever since Maurice came back in the picture, probably 3-4 years ago, I thought that's when the Miz character really took off. But yeah, he's a guy that he really won me over the last few years.
Yeah, I'd like to see him do more stuff with that. Now, one of the questions I have for you, and I just was reading it this morning, with Bayley and Sasha both holding the #1 women's titles and the tag team titles, do you feel like they've now really watered down that tag team title where it doesn't mean a whole lot?
And you can say that. I think right now they're kind of using it as a prop for Bayley and Banks to have their flexibility to be on all the shows, because that's how they're using them. But yeah, because if they weren't the tag team champions, they wouldn't be able to be on Raw or NXT, like as we've seen the last few weeks, and they'd be just restricted to SmackDown. So I think Vince and creative kind of like, I mean, it probably does water it down a little bit. I agree with that. But at the same time, it keeps the door open for them to be jumping from show to show to show without like, oh, why are they just randomly jumping to Raw? Instead of, at least there's a little bit of an explanation behind the fact that they're on Raw and that Sasha's competing for the Raw Women's Championship.
Yeah, I read, and I try not to read too much fan stuff on there, but when people say that women's division is thin, but then I look at NXT and the phenomenal talent they have down there and the athleticism of the women. It's no longer eye candy. It's eye candy that can kick your ass, and I'm loving it. They got some great stars. AEW, I want to talk a little bit about them, and I want how great is it for you covering it and myself? There's so much wrestling right now in the last year.
AEW, yeah, I love the fact that they're here. They're bringing everybody's game up. NXT's game has gone up, and in some WWE's game has gone up, even though the ratings may not show it. But yeah, I think AEW is forcing people to do more things. Obviously, NXT has gotten a lot better. Not that NXT was never ever bad. I love NXT from day one, and it's gotten better and better and better and better. But AEW, I mean, it's a fresh approach. Tony Khan's a bit of a fanboy with some money, so linking up with Cody and the Elite and all those guys was kind of a win-win for all of them. Getting the TNT spot last October was huge. I really, really enjoy their show. And I'll tell you one thing I really enjoy. Talk about a lot of the local talents that we just mentioned, like Brian Pillman Jr. And Robert Ego Anthony. Those guys are routinely on AEW Dark now, Tuesday nights on YouTube. They can't miss show now because, I mean, it's like an old Superstars back when, okay, these are enhancement talents going against the big guys. But at least you're seeing guys from independent promotions who have a little bit of a name in their promotion come out and get a little bit of national exposure, which is really, really cool. And I thought the fact that Pillman was on there against Brian Cage was awesome. Ego Anthony has had a few matches on there now. Another guy from the Chicago area named Joe Alonzo has been on there a few times. Captain Sean Dean is from the area originally. Musa is from the Rockford area. So, yeah, we've had a lot of guys who have been on AEW Dark, and it's become definitely an hour or so of really, really fun and watchable TV. Well, maybe other than Michael Nakazawa. I mean, I don't want to talk about that. But, yeah, I love AEW.
Now, Billy Corgan of the NWA, was it Resistance Pro he ran up there in Chicago?
Yes, it was a Resistance Pro, yes.
Got a chance to meet him in Toronto at SummerSlam. Randomly, my seat is right in front of him. turn around and shake the guy's hand because I go, hey, they hadn't aired yet, but I liked his idea of what he was doing. And he was talking about how he used to love just put a big guy in against a big guy and let them beat the heck out of each other. And I was really, really impressed with the first kind of run there of the NWA, that old school look. It was fresh. What's old is new again. I guess my question is, were you a fan of Resistance Pro? Did you see any similarities between that and how NWA was run with like big guy versus big guy without a whole lot of gimmicks?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't really seen a whole lot of the Resistance shows. I mean, I have friends that did a lot of those shows. It was kind of before I got a little deeper into the Chicago independent scene over the last few years when they used to run regular shows. Actually, they used to run regular shows not far from where I grew up, too, in the Summit VFW or the Summit Park District. I grew up southwest side of Chicago near Midway Airport. But, yeah, I mean, there are some similarities between what they did and what NWA does. And I love what the NWA does with, like, their old school, like, you know, small studio set with the interviews and all that. And let the guys be themselves. Let the women be themselves. You know, I just really enjoyed that presentation.
The Crockett Cup, bringing that back.
That's cool.
I tried to do some research. Now, again, my journalistic integrity is at stake here. I remember buying the quote-unquote After magazines when I was little. Now, I watched AWA. There was an enhancement talent who, depending on the week, went by the name of Lance Allen or Lance Atlas, was a bodybuilder out of Chicago. I bought an off-brand, I guess, magazine, and this sticks in my head. They're in Zubaz. It's him and another guy. They're jacked. They were called the Windy City Dream Team.
Wow.
Now, do I got to do more research, or have you heard of that? Anything in?
Lance Allen rings a bell.
Okay.
I don't remember them or remember the name, but Lance Allen, though, rings a bell because I may have seen him do even WWF enhancement matches. But
he might have, yeah.
Yeah, it's a name that I kind of – okay, it's like one of the guys from the late 80s, early 90s that you may have seen on AWA All-Star Wrestling or something like that.
And I had a chance to interview one of the guys that did AWA, WWE, Frankie DeFalco, right up north of you in Milwaukee.
Yep.
Yeah, Frankie had some really good stories. He had a lockdown session. I want to talk about your podcast. I want to be respectful of your time.
Okay.
I want to talk about the podcast. You started that in January, correct?
Yeah, the full-scale Windy City Slam podcast began in January, yes. And I'll give you a little bit of background on how that began. Obviously, I've been doing the website windycityslam.com since August of 2018. And obviously, stories, features, photos, covering events, all that good stuff. And then last couple of years on Facebook, I always look for old people that I may have known in college or people I may have kind of remembered. I found this gentleman named Chris Lanuti. And Chris used to work at UIC Radio. He worked with me at the Chicago Flame student newspaper. He's a guy, you know, has a sports mind, but he's a radio guy first. So he ended up transferring to Champaign, to University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. He finished there, so we only knew each other for about a year, drifted apart, found each other on Facebook. One day he messages me on Facebook. He's like, would you be interested in being a guest on my Broadcast Basement podcast? So I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's do it. So I became a regular guest every couple of weeks, maybe 5 to 10 minutes a week. I go down to his little basement bar in Evergreen Park, Chicago suburb, and then we record there. And then we got a good little rapport going. I was getting some of the local scene mentioned too, which was very exciting. He thought it was a great niche thing. So then at the end of last year, he's like, why don't we consider doing a separate podcast for Windy City Slam? So I thought about it for maybe 2 seconds and said, yes, let's do it. And then that's how that was born. So now it's a weekly podcast. We do live recordings now, most Mondays at noon on the Podbean app. So basically, if you download that for your phone, or if it's Android or iPhone or an iPad even, you can get that show live as it airs at noon Central Time, Chicago time, every Monday. And it's live podcast, about 30 minutes or so. Chris and I are usually talking about local stuff. We're talking national stuff. What's going on with Vince McMahon and WWE? What's going on with all the local stuff? This past week, check it out. We had Steve Tortorello of Warrior Wrestling on there talking about Friday Night Lights. And in fact, he gave me the scoop of the very final match on the show, which is Jake Something against the bad boy, Joey Janela of AEW. So props off to Steve for that. I really, really appreciate that. And I know we got some listens after that, so big thumbs up. But anyway, that's a little diversion there. But yeah, we started in January. We've done like 28 episodes now. We've had guests ranging from Jonathan Hood, who runs his own podcast, Wrestling Tuesday, and he's a big-time sports talk show host in Chicago, too, for ESPN Chicago. So that was a big get very early on. I've known Jonathan for probably about a decade, going back to some mutual UIC basketball. Then I had like personalities like Val Capone come on. She's a local personality, a ring announcer, a backstage interviewer, all that at some of the shows like Warrior, Freelance, and all that. Also had, off the top of my head, we had Ryan Cross, who's a wrestler and a promoter around southern Wisconsin. He was a cool guest. So yeah, we have we had a handful of guests so far. We're hoping to do more with the local scene as well. So yeah, it's been a fun little run, and we're starting to build the viewership. It's been a little tough during the pandemic and all that, but it's been a fun venture so far, to say the least.
Very cool. I don't know if this will help make you feel good, but we started a podcast, myself and Danny over in the UK office. We've got 4 podcast episodes under our belt, and we've got a total of 18 listens. So we're we had 24, whatever. Danny told me we had 12 listens to one week and we had 24 or something the next, and I'm like, well, if everybody listened again and we didn't lose anybody, hey. But it's a tough thing to break into, because it seems like before everybody and their brother had a podcast, and now during the pandemic, everybody and their other brothers like, hey, we're just sitting around, you know. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm glad our fans will be able to find it. Now the website too. The website's been going, and you'll have to forgive me, but going back to Lance Allen and the Windy City Dream Team, and just the history of Chicago wrestling. Do you have a classic? Are you being a journalist? I mean, do you have do you go back and do any taking a look back? Because I think that'd be cool if only it entertained me.
Yeah, at some point, I think I want to do a little bit of going back in the past and maybe analyzing a show or a match that was big in Chicago, whether it's WWE, AWA, or even an independent show or an independent match that was great that people remember. There's a few people I have on my list in my head here that I want to contact and maybe interview. CM Punk came from, and CM Punk is one of my all-time favorites. Chicago guy. I just loved his performance in the ring. I love his attitude. I love how he, didn't pull punches when he was on the microphone. And, that's where he came from. It was the Lunatic Wrestling Federation. He was trained in the area by Danny Dominion, the Steel Domain. And, stuff like that I would love to really kind of dig into more, whether it's the podcast or the website itself. And, history of things. And I talked to a guy named T.L. Myers who ran the faction, the Chicago Connection. That was that just wrapped up a few years ago. Organizations like PWI and, the name is escaping me. There used to be runs that ran in Southside and Oak Lawn a lot. PCW, I think, was the name of it. And if I'm wrong, I totally apologize to anybody who might be listening. But yeah, he's a guy that ran all these local ran through these local companies. I mean, he worked with some of the local promoters for that, and then he was a guy that had all these different wrestlers. He was a manager. He's a Bobby the Brain Heenan type. And he's a really, really cool interview that I did for the website. I also have a video interview with him, too, on my personal YouTube page. Mike Pankow is my channel there. I have like a bunch of old UIC and like WWE Slam Crate openings on there, but I also have some of my Windy City Slam interviews on there too. So some of the people I've talked to, P.L. Myers, obviously locally, Pat Monix is another guy I talked with locally. He was taking a break from wrestling last time I checked. He stepped away back in February. Great young man. I kind of hope he does make a comeback, but I think there are some personal injury issues that there. But also, excuse me, I'm running out of voice here. Frankie was a great interview that I had. The audio of that is on the YouTube as well. Jay Lethal, I connected through a PR friend, Mark Kruskal, who works with Ring of Honor. So I actually got to talk with Jay Lethal when he was still Ring of Honor champion. A really, really cool, about 17-minute conversation with him. And one of my coolest interviews was an in-person spot with Stephen Merchant. And if that name rings a bell, he's the guy that was behind The Office in the UK. And he did the movie Fighting With My Family with Paige. He was actually in Chicago doing a media tour last winter, I should say, like in January of 2019. Another PR friend of mine, who I've been in the journalism business so long, I get to know all these different PR people. He sends an email to my shoot job, and I'm like looking at it. I'm like, this is interesting. Then in my off hours, and I'm working on Windy City Slam, I'm like, can I get an interview with him for Windy City Slam? And he put it through his bosses. He says yes. So I actually got to meet Steven in person. I would think he'd be a basketball player or something. British accent. He actually had a bit part in the movie too. He helped write it. He directed it. And he had some great things to say about Thea Trinidad, too, as we know as Zelina Vega in WWE, and her role as AJ Lee in the movie. So, yeah, that was a whole lot of fun interviewing him. I've rubbed elbows. I've been lucky to rub elbows with a lot of cool people over the last couple of years. And obviously, being a longtime journalist kind of lent itself to being able to do what I'm doing now.
Man, that's awesome. And that's all available at your YouTube channel?
Yeah, my personal YouTube channel, Mike Pankow, has some of the interviews, which are also linked on WindyCitySlam.com, and they're linked to some of the stories I did on the talent and on the people that I talked to too. And Rob Schamberger, the famous artist that works for WWE as well, C2E2 2019, also a great interview. That's also on WindyCitySlam.com and on the Mike Pankow YouTube channel.
Wow, yeah, we got a lot of stuff to dig through. I'm going to be respectful of your time. I got a couple more questions, but
sure,
it wouldn't be fitting for me not to ask you about this. So Justin Clapper, Wisconsinite, huge Milwaukee Brewers, Green Bay Packers, Wisconsin Badgers fan, Milwaukee Bucks. Mike Pankow down there in Chicago. We got to talk. What a great rivalry that we have with Chicago sports and Wisconsin sports.
Yes.
Now, do you skew more Cubs or White Sox? I noticed the other day you had both games going at the same time.
Well, I know it's probably not a popular decision amongst my Chicago brethren, but I actually like both teams. And here's the reason why. I came from a mixed marriage. My dad was a diehard Cubs fan, and my mom loved the Sox. She didn't want to give that up for him, and obviously my dad wasn't going to give it up for her. So, yeah, I grew up liking both teams, cheering for both teams. And if they obviously play each other a lot more, I'm like, yeah, best team wins. Or sometimes if I'll pull for the team who might be in the best position to win a World Series or make the playoffs or something. But, yeah, I root for both. And when the Cubs won in 2016 for my late father, who I lost in 1997, and he's the guy that helped me get into wrestling as well, and my mom too, she liked it as well. But my dad, I was so happy for him when the Cubs finally won in 16. I cried like a baby that night, and it was an amazing, amazing feeling.
Now, Chicago Bears, Green Bay Packers. That is I'm very proud to be a Packer fan. I'm very proud of that rivalry because that rivalry is older than the NFL. Many fans don't know that. A lot of Packer fans I know don't understand the relationship between Lombardi and Hallis and how George Hallis actually bailed out the Green Bay Packers in the 50s in finance just to keep everything going. I love it. I got a chance after Warrior Wrestling 6 and after All Out to go to Chicago Bears training camp as a guest of our friends at Talk Sport in London.
Nice.
And what an amazing time. Oh, you're a Packer fan. I can't believe you're going to Bears camp. You going to wear a Packer hat? No, because that would be completely disrespectful. When am I ever going to get a chance to go to a training camp media? It was awesome. I want to talk to you about Mitch Trubisky, and now they have Nick Foles, right?
Yes.
So where do you, as a Chicago, separate your journalism, but just like Pankow, the fan, because you know what? It's hard to say that somebody's terrible. What was your Cade McNown? That was a tough one for you, right?
He was pretty bad. Yeah, Mitch is better than him, I think.
But do you think Nick Foles comes in and does it?
Well, I just wanted to see the best guy win that derby. If it's Nick Foles, I'd be very happy because obviously you see what he's done the last few years, leading the Eagles to the Super Bowl. And even a couple of years ago when the Eagles looked like they weren't going to make the playoffs, it was Nick Foles that kind of led them into the playoffs. And obviously they beat the Bears, part and parcel to double doink, of course. But, oh, God, that day was that was a rough night, although that day was made by the fact I got my puppy Obi-Wan earlier that day. So at least I got a good memory from that. But, yeah, that was a rough night. But anyway, I think this is going to push Mitch Trubisky to be a better quarterback. Will he improve his skills in the next few weeks? I don't know. His pandemic probably hurt that he wasn't able to work more with his teammates. But if I had to make a wager on it, I'd say Foles will probably make more starts at this point.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm just hoping that we have football to watch.
Yeah,
to be honest.
I agree with that too.
In 2015, I'm watching. I come home to Wisconsin. I'm working out in Pennsylvania. I come home for Christmas, and we have the NFC Championship comes down to Green Bay and Chicago for who goes to the Super Bowl. And I can't remember his name, but that third-string quarterback that Chicago brought in, and I think that the final was 21-14.
Yeah, it was 2010, actually.
2010. Okay, it was something. It was a one. I was nervous as heck. And my
Caleb
sister.
Haney.
What was his name?
Caleb Haney.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That guy was, just getting a spark off the bench. I was nervous. I remember we won, and my sister, who I'm staying at her house, gets on the phone. I said, who are you calling? Well, the neighbors, they're Bears fans. I'm going to call and rub it in. I'm like, no. Can you imagine? When you're on the other side of that hurts, especially such a big rival. But I'm one of these guys that if the Green Bay Packers can't get in it and do anything, I got a lot of love for the Chicago Bears, simply because we had that rivalry in the 80s where, if you look at it, Green Bay was the heel. We were Charles Martin, all that stuff. We were definitely
destroyed.
We were definitely the heel, but when I look, not to make Minnesota Viking fans upset, but with the Love Boat and all this cockiness, I went to school, played football in River Falls, which is really close to the Twin Cities. So that fan base, we butted heads, and I know our fan base can be tough, but Chicago at least has never, like Urlacher, never heard him really say. I haven't dove deep on it, but say too many stupid things off the top of his head. I like every time I go to Chicago, I can now see Urlacher with a full head of hair on every third billboard.
Yeah, you go by O'Hare Airport, there has to be like 25 billboards or like
my goodness.
mile radius, I believe.
The point, I guess there is no question there, is that my hat's off to an organization that has been around longer than the NFL, just like the Green Bay Packers. Best rivalry, oldest rivalry in football. So it's nice to have a conversation like that. And then, what did you think of? I didn't get it. I didn't watch one episode of it, but I imagine you probably watched the last. Is it the Last Dance?
Last Dance, yes.
How was that?
Documentary. I loved every second of it. And I'm like, they're showing all the old highlights and all the old clips of this and that. And I'm telling my wife, oh, yeah, I remember this. And I can tell what the final score of the game was that they're going to show the highlight of from here. And I can tell you who's going to hit the big shot. I remember all that like it's yesterday. The Bulls dynasty in Chicago was like the Bible for us basketball fans locally. And it was so well done. It was one of the best things ESPN has ever done. I thought their most recent thing about the home run derby with Sosa and McGuire left a lot to be desired. There's some stuff they didn't even touch in that thing, which I thought they should have did it. But yeah, that documentary, the 10-part Last Dance, unbelievable. It was awesome. I loved every second of it.
So now here's the biggest question of the night.
Okay.
You, Mike Pankow, Chicago Bulls fan, pro wrestling fan, where do you stand on Dennis Rodman leaving to go join the NWO during a playoff series?
I actually loved it. I mean, I know he shouldn't have skipped out on practice, but I think Phil Jackson had the understanding that, yeah, Dennis is a different kind of cat. And you knew he was going to do silly stuff like that. You knew he was going to do a sojourn to Vegas once in a while. I enjoyed the heck out of that. And in fact, if I can just reach back right here, give me just a second.
Yeah, no.
Display here.
Look at that.
Rodzilla. NWO figure.
Awesome. Rodzilla in all his glory.
Oh, brother.
Okay, Mike, my final question for you, we'll wrap it up because I know you've got things to do. Run through again for us all. Where can we catch up with Windy City Slam? What's the social medias, the Twitters? And we'll try to run them across, but we want to get many eyes on what you're doing.
Great. Yeah, first of all, WindyCitySlam.com is where you find all of our stories. We have an event calendar today. We try to keep as updated as possible with all the local promotions for the Chicago area, Northeast Illinois, Northwest Indiana, Southeast Wisconsin, even a little bit in the Milwaukee area as well. So we're trying to get a nice little base of wrestling fans to come in and check that out. We have stories on a lot of the local promotions that I cover. And then obviously I'll sometimes write about the big boys too, AEW, Impact, sometimes a little bit of WWE. I'm still waiting to attend my first WWE show as part of Windy City Slam, but fingers crossed that'll happen one day soon. Facebook, we're at Windy City Slam. Twitter, Windy City Slam. Instagram, Windy City Slam. And also, obviously, my personal YouTube page, at Mike Pankow, is my channel on YouTube for all the interviews and even some of my silly Slam Crate boxings I did. And then also it's the podcast, Windy City Slam Podcast. It's available on, let me see here if I get all this right. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, we've got Stitcher Radio, we've got Spotify, and obviously also the Podbean app where we do live podcasts almost every Monday at noon. Next week will be August the 4th. It'll be a Tuesday instead of a Monday. We'll be live. I'm hoping to get a guest for that as well. It reminds me I need to send some messages out to see if I can get him to come on. But yeah, that's all the information you'd ever want to need. WindyCitySlam.com will also take you to the podcast. There's also a new tab on there that says podcast or just Windy City Podcast. Click on that. There's a player with the most recent 10 episodes. Check that out. You could also download from any of the other providers that I already mentioned. And also, too, on the website, a new feature I just added, Friends and Links. So some other local podcasts are on there, local news sites that I've worked with in the past. as well as you guys over at Wrestling Travel. There's a link for you guys there as well.
Oh, wow. I was just going to say, I didn't want to interrupt you, but we're just figuring out our YouTube. We'll have to add you to our featured channels there.
Right.
Because I know the guys fans love listening to the interviews. Not so much mine, but we also work with a couple other lovely ladies that are helping us out. So, yeah, awesome. So thank you. I can't thank you enough. If I make the journey down on August 7th, if Chicago doesn't ban Wisconsin from entering, will I see you at Friday Night Lights?
Fingers crossed. Yes, I have a little bit of a medical thing early next week. If it goes well, I'm hoping to be there.
Awesome. And I promise to stay. I will even stay 8 feet apart just for you. I promise. Mike Pankow. Thank you. It's always good to talk with you. Really good to see you. Glad we could do this in an official capacity. But thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, you're so very welcome. Maybe we'll have you on the podcast one day too.
There we go. I mean, if your ratings, once they get low enough and they can't go any lower, you call me. Thanks, buddy. Have a great day.
All right, you too.